Alright guys, I hope that you have your water, your paint, and
it's not doing it at the same time.
Jacoby. And your paper ready, your brush ready, all that good stuff. Let me show you. This is what we are making today. And yeah, it's just gonna be fun, like a little abstract. We're gonna use some wet on wet and some wet on dry techniques, so I will walk you through those things. And I think that's all. Okay, I'm gonna wait for a couple more people to pop on. I'm gonna start going through the colors that you'll need today. I'm gonna put them on here. If you don't have a palette that looks like this, don't worry at all. You can bring me your palette real quick next. My kids are using this little palette, which has seen better days, but it's still well loved and well used. There you go, thank you. And today we're just gonna need a dark green for the rind, red and some pink for the flesh of the watermelon, and some black for the little seeds. So if you guys have questions or anything like that, I'm trying to monitor like the chat as well, but please be patient with me while I'm doing that. Okay, so let me show you the colors. So if you have a dark green, great. If you don't, you can take some yellow, you need to go over there. If you can hear what I'm saying, so you can follow that. I know, it's the internet, that's what it does. I'm gonna take some blue. And look, we've made a green. And say that green's not dark enough for you, you can add a little bit of red to it, just a little bit. And that will darken it even more, make it just a deeper green. So I'm gonna show you these colors right here. Okay, so we're gonna make a color like this, and as well as like the lighter green that I just made right before that, with a little bit more yellow and just blue without the red. So it makes it a little bit brighter, because you'll notice in the rind there are some different colors. So these are the colors you'll need for that. And then if you have like a normal red, and then I'm gonna grab a little bit of a pink color that I have. Paints are a little dry. Okay, I'm gonna just grab a couple colors like that and mix them together, and then that's gonna give me the flesh color of my watermelon. If it's too red, add a little bit more pink. If it's too pink, add a little bit more red. And honestly, you can do like this color that I have here, or you can do like even a really light pink. This is all whatever you want to do. Okay, so then for your black, if you have black, go ahead and use it. If you do not have black, fun little trick, color theory here. You take a little bit of yellow, little bit of red, and a little bit of blue. Those are all your primary colors, right? I'm gonna mix them all together here. And I'm gonna look, so it's looking a little too green, so I'm gonna add some red here. And you can just keep mixing until it looks like a good shade of black. It might be a little bit more of a gray black, but that's okay. So that's just if you don't have black. All right. So if everyone's feeling comfortable, we'll kind of go from there. All right, so I want you to mix that green color. You can go for like a dark to medium green. I have some colors that I'm already gonna use. And honestly, it's just watercolor. I'm just gonna mix it all together. It's gonna be great. And we're gonna start off with the rind of this one over here. So feel free to kind of compositionally, like you can just move these around however you want. I just lay them down so that you can get the general idea and shape of what we're doing. But like say I want, the only thing I need to be mindful of is if I'm gonna do like a rind right here, if I'm gonna do this curve right here, I need to be thinking about where I want the end of my watermelon to go. Like if I'm doing a full triangle like that, I don't want to put the rind right here and then have the end kind of coming off the paper, right? So you can angle it like this. If you want to make one that's like over here, just make sure like, oh, I'm gonna have one that's taken it, a bite's been taken out of the watermelon. That's fine. But for this, I'm gonna actually, I'm just gonna kind of flip this over. I'm gonna go with similar composition here, right? So I have my green on my paintbrush. If you need more, go ahead and like mix yourself some. It's a little too dark. Okay, I like that color. We're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go right here. See? Yes, you will be able to watch this later. It will be posted to my page, as long as Facebook lets it. So barring any complications, we should be good. While this is still wet, I'm gonna go ahead and dip my brush again in the water, and I'm gonna take that wet brush, and I'm just gonna kind of drag that color out a little bit, right? And while this is wet, if it's too wet, I have a little towel here, right? So I'm gonna get my brush a little bit dry, pick up some of that color. Oh, I totally forgot to tell you guys which size. This is a round 8, and this is a brush size that I use most often. So if you have something a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, anything else, just, I mean, feel free to use what you have. But round 8 is my favorite size and shape brush to use for most projects. Okay, so now that I've gotten that to kind of bleed out, right, a little bit, I'm gonna take that lighter color. So if you have the green that you were working with, you can just mix a little bit more yellow into it. And then it's gonna give me a good color like that. And I'm just gonna drop it. This is called wet on wet. And then that is gonna, watercolor's fun. This is one of my favorite parts about watercolor because it kind of just does its own thing. You add the colors, but it really comes up with its own kind of flow. So you'll see how like the gradients are right there. You can tell where the water was, there was more water than there was paint, and you can also tell where there was more paint than water. So feel free to play around with this. Okay. I want it to be a little bit lighter, so I'm just dipping my brush in the water and adding just more water. Completely clean brush, just adding more water to get more playful textures like I have in the other one. All right, so now that we have this little rind done, I'm gonna do the other side. Now I have to remember, be mindful of where your watermelon is gonna go. But when you're placing your second watermelon slice, or you can do 3, you can do 4, whatever you wanna fit on your paper. This is a really big sheet of paper. Feel free to just kind of play. All right, so my brush is clean again. I'm gonna go back to that darker color over here, and I'm thinking about where the watermelon's going. I think I'm just gonna kind of do one over here. And also, if you feel more comfortable, which I kind of do, flip your paper around. That's totally fine. All right, with this one, I know that I'm gonna show you guys a watermelon that has a bite taken out, kind of like that one on the top there. So I'm coming a little bit closer to the edge, but still not too close to the edge. Okay, I'm gonna take this and kind of blend the colors. I'm using that lighter green. Now I'm gonna clean off my brush entirely. Now I just have water on here, and while it's all wet, I'm just kind of playing with that. Just adding a little bit more water to kind of give it a chance to do some fun things. If your watermelon rind, like you see how mine has that darker edge right there on the rind, if yours doesn't have that, feel free to go back into that dark color. Once this has, you don't even have to wait for it to dry, honestly. I'll just show you how to do that a little bit. So I can do it right here. Like say this isn't dark enough for me. I've loaded my brush with that dark green color again, and I'm just gonna kind of go in right along the edge. And you're just using the tip, very tip of the brush here. And you'll see it will bloom color, like the color will kind of bleed into the rest of it. I'm getting a little bit more green. I feel like I don't have quite enough. Okay, there we go. Now you guys should be able to see it a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. And you see how that color is just kind of flowing into whatever's wet on the pigment, or whatever's wet on the paper. I'm going to show you on this other one because this one's not completely dry, but it is more dry than that one. So with this one, I add that dark, rich green color on there. It is creating these little blooms. But since this is a little bit more dry, I'm going to get some more, it'll be like more detailed, I guess. And then it's still bleeding a little bit because it is still a little bit wet. And also, like, don't feel that you need to do the whole edge. If you look at the outside of a watermelon, it has those stripes on it, right? So feel free to play and just maybe add some stripes, whatever you want to do here. This is your watermelon. Feel free to kind of experiment. All right, I'm cleaning off my brush right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing a good amount of paint for the flesh part. So I'm picking up some, this is called opera pink, bright opera pink, I think actually. So I have like a really bright pink. And then I'm gonna kind of tone it down with a red, just a regular, this is a permanent, it's called permanent red. And those colors together kind of create this really nice, deep pink red, which, you know, if you look at a watermelon, it's pink, but still kind of red. I don't know how else to describe that. But you can also do, like I said earlier, you can do the light colored pink, you can do a really deep red, whatever you got. And whatever you want to play with, go for that. All right, so this, remember we talked about the shape. So where this is gonna kind of come out, I need to kind of be thinking about that because I'm gonna drop the most color. When you open up a watermelon, the deepest color is gonna be right near the middle. So I'm gonna be dropping the most color right in that little area. So in order to do that, I have to kind of play with the shape, right? So I have a couple of extra brushes here, and I can just do like that, kind of give myself an idea of where that tip is going to end, right? So I know it's going to be right about there, and I did get some paint on my paper, but that's okay. So alright. Now this doesn't have to be a perfect triangle, it can be more organic shape, it's totally fine. The only thing to note here is like I'm depositing a lot of color right here, but I also, if you look at this, I left some white spaces, some negative space there. And that is because when you look at a watermelon, the flesh of a watermelon, it's wet, right? So there's light and highlight glistening off of the watermelon. So I want to try to keep that in mind while I'm doing that to make it more realistic. Okay, so I'm just kind of depositing the color, still trying to keep that shape in line. I'm going to take this paintbrush, and it has this color on it, right? I'm just going to dip it a little bit in my water. I'm not going to completely clear it off, but I do want to start to work the color into where I have less pigment on my brush and more water on my brush. So I'm going to do that by getting my brush wet. Still going here. Oh, Kelly, you're so sweet. Thank you. My kiddos are doing this right alongside me, but they're out of line of the camera. I'm adding a little bit more water here. Still not completely clearing it off, but you see the color difference between this little spot and that spot, right? So okay, Kobe, get back. Go paint. And even though this is more watered down, the color, the pigment from this wet area is still going to kind of flow into that. So here, I'm going to clear off my brush almost. So if you look at, that looks really good, bud. I just did a couple little swishes. This is about how much pigment I have left on my brush right now. So get yourself to about that point, because I want to kind of make sure that I'm working the shape correctly, making it more triangular. Okay, so now with that same amount of pigment on my brush, I'm just kind of playing. Like, you can just create those spaces wherever you want. You can create a lot of spaces, you can create a few. Like if I'm looking at it and it looks like it's, oh, that's too much white space, I can just kind of cover it up a little bit while the paint is still wet. And I'm just dipping my brush to keep it wet. And you see how the pigment is getting lighter and lighter. Now, if your edge has dried a little bit, like it just did there, I just kind of, you put water on it and kind of brush it just a little bit to reactivate it. And that watercolor is very forgiving. That's why I love it so much, because you can be a perfectionist, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, Max. All right, so I'm just down to the point where I really don't have a whole lot of pigment, but I'm gonna go ahead and take the rest of the pigment off my brush, give it a good clean. You still don't want to use like a paper towel or anything like that. You just want your water, your brush loaded up with water. So now I'm gonna go ahead, and while that area is still wet, I'm just kind of going and bringing the rest of the water to the edge of that rind, because if you look at a rind, it has that white edge, right? So you can completely leave a gap between there. That's totally fine. But I'm not going to today. I'm just creating that really, really light pink color. So now you kind of seen one rind, right? We have that. I think it looks good. We're gonna let that dry before we put the seeds down. But sorry guys, my kids are like being goobers. He just really wants his face on here. Okay, I'm gonna flip my paper around and we're gonna go at it from the other side to do this piece of watermelon. And don't worry, like if you're looking at mine right now, like say I really like the outcome of this painting and I want to hang it up. One, I have an option. Well, I have a few options. I can like add another piece of watermelon here, or do something else to kind of bring your eye more around the paper. Please stop. Or number two, these are really big sheets of paper. These are 9 by 12. I don't know about you. I've not seen a whole lot of 9 by 12 frames. So what you can do is you can trim this after you're done to kind of cut more down into a piece of paper that would fit in a smaller frame, essentially. So if it's off center, that's okay. And just be forgiving of yourself. Like, this is fun. And if you make it fun, or it can be like really horrible otherwise if you know, are just looking at it like, oh, I want mine to look exactly like that one. Just be free with yourself and play, and you will enjoy it, and it will be a great source of anti-stress for you. Okay, so I have reloaded my brush with that pink, red, fleshy color again. Now this one, I'm gonna do something like this little guy. Now, it's gonna have a bite taken out of it. It can be a bite that deep. It can be a bite this deep. However you wanna do it. So I'm gonna kind of try to think about the shape here. I might come back and add more to that rind side there. All right, so I've added like the little lines to try to give myself an idea of where I want it to go. And instead of going all the way out to a tip here, I'm just gonna kind of go like that. And I've got a little bite, or a couple little bites, however it looks for you. And then I'm gonna go back to my color, really loading my brush up with that red pink. And we're gonna kind of go fill this end in. Now this one, I'm not gonna put as much, like there's a bit more of the darker color there. Now you have to imagine that darker color was probably at the end there, that's already been bitten off, right? Because that's the sweetest part. Of course, that's the part that was bitten off. But I'm gonna go ahead and get dip my brush in the water and get my pigment so it's a little bit lighter on the pigment, heavier on the water, and then I'm gonna kind of play and do the water highlights, leaving those little blank spaces. And as you work your way towards the rind, just keep adding more water to your brush. Now this, I added a little bit more than I anticipated, but it's okay, I can fix that. By dragging a little bit of that pigment and dropping it in, I can do that. Or I can just go back over here and pick up a little bit more pigment. That's okay too, whichever. And that's a fun thing you can do too with the wet on wet. That's anytime you have wet paint on the paper and you're adding more wet paint to the paper. So see, this is kind of watered down. I can go over here, pick up a little bit of pigment here, and well, that didn't pick up much. You see those little blooms, kind of like how we had that over there. So just keep playing. I'm just kind of tapping my brush around to create like, not like I'm doing circles like every so many inches or centimeters or millimeters or whatever. I'm just kind of tapping my brush around. Alright, I'm at this point where I'm gonna take the rest of the paint off my brush. I'm gonna get it completely loaded with water. I'm just gonna kind of meet the flesh to the rind. Now this rind over here bled a little bit, so I'm gonna try and fix that. I'm just gonna pick up a little bit more green. Just create like a cleaner edge. And you'll notice that the green is not bleeding into the red, which is also a really cool thing. That happened a little bit on these paintings, and honestly, I love the way that that looks. So hopefully you do too, but that's okay. This looks like a curved knife. Took a little chunk out of this piece, but it's okay, it's all right. All right, I've cleaned off my brush entirely from just fixing the rind, so I have completely just water brush. Now I am going to pick up some black, and I'm gonna work on this side because this side's completely dry. What happens, you know how the bloom happens when you drop wet color on wet paper. You would have that same thing. If I went to add the seeds to this one right now because it's so wet, I would just get black little clouds everywhere. I wouldn't get they're not detailed, but a little bit detailed. If you have a smaller brush at this point, you can switch to the smaller brush, but don't feel like you have to. Because, like I said, I use this for everything. You just use that little tip, and it's not, you're gonna get some good seed shapes. Let me find my black here. Sorry guys, I just added a bunch more paint to my palette, and I haven't used it as much. I'm not familiar with everywhere that all my colors are now. Okay, so I just have regular black, and for these seed shapes, you know, a seed is gonna be shaped. I'm gonna pull this up over here. It's gonna be shaped almost like a teardrop, right? You can do that kind of shape. You can do, like, if you're looking at the seed from another angle, it can be almost like an oval or just like a line almost. Really, it just kind of depends, because, you know, when you open up a watermelon, it's not every seed looks like that. That would look silly. You want it to look more organic, so you're just gonna kind of add some lines, dots, and maybe a couple of those little seed shapes, however you want to do it. So I'm just gonna kind of take the tip of my brush. I'm not applying much pressure here. I'm adding some of those shapes. And then I'm gonna kind of go back in and very, very lightly with the very tip of my brush, I'm gonna add, like, you know, some lines. And try to vary, like, the angles that they're all at. That way you don't just have like one seed repeating itself over and over and over. So, and you know, I think I'm gonna stop there with that one. It's really easy to just overdo it, but I'm just gonna kind of take a step back. Does anybody have any questions so far? I'm gonna wait a couple minutes to do them on this side because this one is still wet, because I did add a bit more water, a little bit shorter, so I don't want to add them to that one yet. But if anybody has any questions, please ask away. This is you know, I don't know everything about watercolor, but I've been watercoloring for a while, so I just wanted to share what I do know and kind of give you guys some encouragement and uplift your spirits a little bit while people are kind of stuck inside their houses, or your kids are stuck inside your house, whatever that looks like for you. And tomorrow's project because tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day. I keep forgetting that. I forgot what day of the week it is most of the time. We're gonna do some rainbows, but these are interesting rainbows because we're only gonna use primary colors. So I'm gonna go a little bit into color theory tomorrow. That'll be a fun little lesson for your kiddos. Your primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. So literally I used 3 colors for this entire rainbow, and I'm gonna show you how tomorrow. And that will also be at 1 o'clock. Okay, this area on my watermelon is still wet, but I'm gonna go ahead and start working up here, just to kind of, I still have just that same amount of black. I haven't gotten more or gotten any water on my brush. Oh, see, that's a little wet. That's fine.
I'm done.
You're done? Can I see? Oh, I love it. Oh, this is
falling out.
okay. So this is my 7-year-old's, and this is adorable, and I love it. Thank you for sharing. That's another thing. If you guys are doing this with your, like, just by yourself or with your kids, I would love. I don't care if you do it today. I don't care if you do it a year from now. I would love to see the pictures of the paintings that you guys create, because it's really exciting for me to see you all enjoying what I'm doing. Okay. No, you cannot watch a movie. Okay, so this is still a little wet, so I can't really do much right now. One thing is, I have my little towel here. I know I told you guys paper towels. I use this lovely, well-loved towel, and it will stain whatever towel you use, so please don't use a towel that you're attached to. But I'm going to take the tip of it, and I'm just going to kind of soak up some of that water. Now with that, it's going to take a little bit of the pigment as well, but that's okay, because that's essentially going to help that dry a little bit more. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can do for you right now. Once you have this finished, I mean, you can really do whatever you want with it, which is kind of cool. And I hope that, like, if you did this today and, you know, it didn't come out exactly the way that you wanted it to, I hope that you'll consider, like, you know, get another piece of paper, try it again. This video will be up on Facebook, which is probably the most common question I've been asked in the last few days since announcing all of this. So unless Facebook takes it down for some crazy reason, it'll be there for you to play with however long from now. Yeah, that's still wet, so that's okay. You know what? I'm gonna play with this because it's still wet. So I'm just touching and adding a little bit of black, and it's kind of clouding out, but it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of looks cool. I can always go over it later and add more of the specific details, but it still kind of looks cool. Alright. When you guys have brushes, I'm like a brush freak. When you're done painting every day, just like clear your brush off really well with water, and then to help it maintain that point, you literally just take a towel, paper towel, whatever, and like I'm just kind of twisting it as I'm pulling it back. Oh, that looks good. That's dripped though. Love it, love it. Yes, oh, I forgot about that part. Sign your work, y'all. So my little dude put his initials. That's usually how I sign my work, is with my initials. Any color you want. I'm gonna pick up, I don't know, I'll just do black. That's fine. Nice and easy. And I'm gonna write the year below it because I like to look back at these and see when I did this and how it all came together and how it looked and how my work will change. So like this is from 2018. This is from today. This is from yesterday. I feel like I've made improvements, but also it's a stylistic change. So that's kind of cool too. So if you guys want to see this one, I'll show you a little bit another cooler way to do it if you are working quickly. So I'm going to take that same green. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow though, just to make it a little bit lighter. Oh, and you can reactivate watercolor. So like if you're using it on a palette like this, just add a little bit of water and it picks that color right back up. Okay, so I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna work really quickly on this one. So just follow along as best you can. I have my brush loaded up with this light green color, right? Okay, I'm gonna make it a little rind. And add a little bit of water. Alright, and really quickly I'm gonna take more of the pink color. That way it's a little bit different than the other. And I'm gonna take that pink color and mix it back with the pink red that I was doing earlier. And I'm gonna go like this. Again, I'm trying to work quickly so that it will go wet on wet. I'm gonna do that. And this. And I'm reactivating that green a little bit because it did dry a little. But I'm kind of blending that green with the pink. That looks kind of cool, right? And so this one, just deposit a little bit more color into it. A little bit more of that green color from the rind. It's a cool little, more girly, pinky kind of watercolor. And green and red are complementary colors. So like any shade of green along with any shade of red, they're gonna really pop. Which is why watermelon's so pretty. Now, yeah, if you look at this one, you're getting a lot of like the bloom and the granulation that comes from the texture of the paper along with how the pigment and the water are reacting together. And again, that's just, I love it. I think it's my favorite part of watercolor, is seeing how fun those shapes come together. Okay, now this one is a little bit more dry. You can see how those little splotches, they kind of grayed out, right? So I'm gonna pick up a little bit more black now. You might already be done. You might be a couple steps behind me. That's okay, that's okay. You feel free to rewatch and pause and go at your own speed. I'm gonna just pick up the black directly over those little spots where I did the gray earlier, or the little piece that bloomed out. I just kind of added a little bit, and now they have a little bit of a shadow, which is kind of cool. Now, this one, I'm gonna wait until it dries to do. the seeds. But that's basically it, guys. Again, we're doing a rainbow, primary color rainbow tomorrow, which is really fun. And I just kind of played with it, so I might show y'all how to do a little clover leaf too. Did you do a bunch of hearts? Oh my goodness, my kids on my husband's account. Just flooding it with likes and loves. Gotta love it. Anyways, okay, so I'm gonna work wet on wet, kind of similarly how we did here, especially like how that kind of blends together. It really just depends on how quickly you work. Jacoby, stop. But you don't have to have them touch like that. I just really love it. So we're gonna just create all of these colors from 3 colors, and then they're gonna bleed into each other and kind of look fun. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's all I have for you today. If you want to share this, it's public, so feel free, share away. And please, again, send me the things that you're painting, because I really, really would love to see them. Jacoby, stop. Oh my goodness. All right. Thank you guys for joining me. Have a good day.